The sea level rise is the direct effect of climate change. Because of the loss of the glaciers, the ice pack, the heating up of the atmosphere, the oceans act as the heat sink, and so they begin to rise. And that's what is the direct effect of climate change here in South Louisiana for our communities, just as it is in Bangladesh, the Maldives, and other low-lying places around the world. The folks who live in any of the coastal areas are increasingly moving north. And it's just become a fact of life, and it's extremely disruptive. It's the most vulnerable people who live in the most vulnerable communities. So it's people who are the poorest, who have the least opportunity to earn a living someplace else. And so those are the folks who are seeing their children leave. Every June 1st, we start getting nervous again. Will the next storm come? Because the scientists predict that as a result of climate change, we will be facing more intense storms. I was listening to the radio the other day and someone said in a call-in show talking about climate change, and they said, you know, I don't agree with climate change. Well, I don't agree with gravity when I fall and fall on my face and get hurt, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists. It's documented. So the science is there, and there are people that want to deny the science, but it's clear. Sea level rises have been measured, they're verifiable. Climate change over the last 650,000 years is very well documented. The facts are there. You can deny them if you choose to, but we're seeing the results every day here in South Louisiana. And whether you want to say that's because of climate change or something else, the effects are very real. And so we have an obligation to address those issues, both from a social justice perspective and from an environmental stewardship perspective. We try to phrase it that help us help people in need, and also just practice the virtue of prudence. And let's assume that these scientists all over the world know what they're talking about, and let's take steps to deal with it. Would anybody disagree that we should have less pollution? And we try to put it that way, and just ask people to practice good stewardship, and the results of that will be an improved environment. And the solution is clearly at the individual level and the society level, both nationally and internationally. I mean, as individuals, we have to take steps. I drive a Prius, I have solar collectors at my house, we recycle. People, that's just the virtue of stewardship. But then we also have an obligation to work at the legislative level and the policy level to make sure that changes happen at the societal level. And so I think we have to be advocates, we have to practice individual responsibility, and we have to organize and educate. For a long time, religious people thought that when Scripture talks about dominion over the earth, it, as in the Industrial Revolution, just leads to using up every single resource we can find. But since the turn of the century, our interpretation of that Scripture passage has changed vastly. And so as the science becomes clearer and more religious denominations are accepting this science, then there's a concomitant moral obligation to change our behavior based on what we know.